So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, and it is not yet hump day, but some people tell me that there's going to be a storm arriving here in Pittsburgh. So we're sort of excited about that. Happy to have a little bit of change of scenery as most of us are hunkered down. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm also thrilled that we're continuing to do business as usual and bring amazing guests to all of you each and every day. Jonathan Kirsting's with us today, as always, and he's Vice President of all things media and marketing. And you might read a little bit about Jonathan just recently on our Get PGH microsite, because there's more to Jonathan than just the Tech Council, and he's a serious cyclist. You might get a chance to know a little bit about the man behind the cycle and the work that he's done. I just want to do a little plug. Get PGH is a new microsite that we're telling stories about. So we are thrilled to have our guest here. This is actually, we're sort of like Saturday Night Live, and we probably need to give him something, but this is his third appearance on our show. And each and every time it is absolutely timely and it's absolutely lively. So we're pretty thrilled about now what is going on in Aurora. And I will introduce our guest in one moment. I would like to give a shout out to Huntington Bank. They've been partners with us right from the onset. And as we get into this next iteration of the CARES Act, which I know is being discussed in Washington, I'm sure they'll be very, very active in making sure that businesses around our region have access to what they need to continue to thrive. And also, I want to give some recognition to our wholly owned subsidiary, which is 40 by 80. That's the longitude and latitude of Pittsburgh. And that is where the Tech Council leads many of our efforts to support entrepreneurship and the acceleration of workforce development across our region. So we've muted your mics, and we've muted your mics on purpose because we don't really want to hear what's in the background of all of your homes and offices. But be considerate to our guest. And in addition, we have a chat section. Jonathan will keep his eyes peeled on the chat section, and we will hopefully have enough time to answer questions and engage with the audience, because that's really our intent today, to have a casual conversation with some of the bright minds that are leading work here across our region. So I'm really excited to have Aurora representation, the Vice President of Government Relations and Government Affairs at Aurora. He is a friend of the tech community, and he is a transplant that actually feels like a native Pittsburgher, and he has exercised his civic muscle in many, many ways that I really want to shine the light on. So we're going to talk about Aurora, but I want to bring on Gerardo Interiano, and he is joining us from his own home office, and I'm thrilled to have him here for a third time. We will send you a Pittsburgh Tech Council t-shirt, and I will have it personally delivered to your home, because we're like Saturday Night Live now. People count how many times they come back on the show. So thank you, Gerardo. Thank you so much for being here. And I know you've been through so much over the last few weeks, if not months, I'm sure, behind the scenes. But before we talk about the company, let's talk about you, and let's just talk about the role that you have and your relocation here to Pittsburgh. So welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Audrey. It's always a pleasure to be here and appreciate all the work that you guys do. Exciting to be chatting with you guys. So yeah, my family and I recently moved up to Pittsburgh last summer, and we have been having the time of our lives. The one complaint that my kids have is that I promised them that we would be moving here and they would have a lot of snow. And so far, over the last 18 months, Pittsburgh has not yet delivered. But I know we went sledding last week when we had snow a few weeks ago, and then hopefully we're going out there again tomorrow.
Well, I think they will be pleased by tomorrow.
Good, that's our hope.
And maybe this will be a winter where we'll see some of that activity, and it's
we hope so, because up until now, Mother Nature has proven me a liar.
So just tell us real quickly, what's it been like? What surprised you about Pittsburgh?
I mean, I think Pittsburgh has an incredible opportunity to tell a story, right? Like, there's so many other cities that you kind of know what to expect when you're coming into them, and I think Pittsburgh, it's blown all my expectations out of the water, right? And partially it's because I didn't have any. Like, I didn't know what to expect.
Wow.
And I didn't know, I knew a lot about the history and the incredible work that's been happening here. Obviously, I knew about CMU and the universities and the healthcare system. But from a tech community perspective, like, it's incredible to see the growth that the tech community has seen here in the last 10 years, and to see how the culture of the city is changing as a result of it. So we have been really, really impressed with the community, and we're excited to call this home. The kids love it. My wife and I love it, and we're hoping to be able to continue to get more and more ingrained into the community.
It's great. It's great. You've been you really, I mentioned earlier about your civic muscle, and we'll get into that in a minute. But let's just talk about, the Uber acquisition, right? Well, before we get into the Uber acquisition, let's talk about Aurora.
Sure.
Talk about the company, give us a little bit of the history. People know you've been in the news, et cetera, but really talk about the mission and vision and the work that your company does.
Yeah, so our mission is to deliver the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. Right, we were founded from the very beginning here in Pittsburgh. Right, so we were a dual headquartered company with some of our employees in California and Palo Alto, soon to be Mountain View, and then the rest of the employees that are here in Pittsburgh. And two of our founders came out of CMU, so we have really strong roots here in Pittsburgh. Both Chris Urmson and Drew Bagnell have their roots here in the community and literally came out of Pittsburgh, right? So our commitment here has been strong from the very beginning. As far as a business model, we've always said that our business model is one of partnerships, right? Like we want to be best in class at what we know best. And for us, it's the technology, right? Like we believe that the Aurora Driver is going to be the safest driver that we're going to be able to deploy broadly, but we're going to do that through our partnerships. And I think that this acquisition that we're going to talk about is a testament on how that business model is going to play out. Right? Like we want to identify who are the best in class business partners when it comes to passenger mobility, when it comes to trucking, when it comes to manufacturing, and go and partner with them to then deploy the Aurora Driver as a result of those partnerships.
Wow. So then let's jump in then. So there's this acquisition of Uber, the ATG, that's been here. And, to be honest, their presence in coming to Pittsburgh was a deep inflection point in a positive way in terms of the way they planted themselves in the community and the work that they were doing. So there probably are some people who are saying, oh, what does that mean? Their name really did a lot for us, and they really attracted talent from all around the world. They changed the conversation about Pittsburgh in terms of autonomy, et cetera. Look, the world changes, life changes, and we're moving at the speed of light. So we all need to understand that these kinds of changes are going to occur. I look at this as a positive thing, but what we would like to hear is more from you. So what do you think that means? It's early in the game right now, and I understand that.
No, Pittsburgh has positioned itself as the epicenter of self-driving technology, right? Like you have so many companies that are here. You have this incredible talent pool that's coming out of the higher education institutions that are here in the city. And there's no reason why that cannot continue to grow here in the community. One of the things that probably excites us more than anything else about this acquisition of ATG is that we already have a strong presence here as a company, as Aurora, and to be able to only increase that presence here in the community by bringing the ATG team into the Aurora family, it just continues to solidify the fact that Pittsburgh is doing incredible things on this front. Our relationships with the city, with the state, and what this means for the future of the technology sector here, and what it means for our ability to continue to grow and to continue to invest, it's very, very real. And so for us, that's part of the exciting narrative. It's that we are a Pittsburgh company, and we feel that this is one of our headquarters, and the fact that we get to bring this incredible team into the fold.
Yeah, you can feel that. For those of you that didn't have a chance to hear Chris Urmson, who we actually did an interview with, it would be well worth it to go back and listen to him, because it was interesting to see the actual interconnections and sort of his own passion as a leader for making sure that there is presence in Pittsburgh. And that was even before the announcement of Uber. I personally see that Uber planting their roots here was fabulous. I mentioned that earlier. There is I'm sure that there is some, concern, and we'll get to that. But I don't want to make up any kinds of, imaginary kinds of comments, because we don't know what happens. But what do you think some of the early steps of the integration are going to look like, that for those of us that are outside of work of Aurora will see?
Sure. No, look, the integration is going to be done in a really thoughtful way with an incredibly talented tech team, right? Like the advantage of being able to bring this team, like we would never have gone after the ATG acquisition if it wasn't for the technology and the talent that they have there, right? Like they've been building this incredible program. They have a strong presence here. They're really leading on so many different fronts that we have an opportunity to bring that team into the fold and go through that integration process. We've already announced we're going to take a majority of all those employees that
Wow.
are part of the ATG team and bring them into the fold at Aurora across their different offices, right? They have a really strong presence here, but they also have offices throughout the country. And what part of what that allows us is to continue to develop and to continue to deploy the Aurora Driver more broadly, right? Part of our mission is that we're going to do this safely, quickly, and broadly. So in line with the broadly component of the mission, by bringing in a team like ATG, it's going to give us access to these other communities and this other talent that they have throughout the country to allow us to continue to develop that driver and to be best in class at what we do.
And what you do in terms of, safety and autonomy can transcend a lot of markets. It's not necessarily just in the vehicle market. So
No, absolutely, right? Like that's part of the partnership and part of the model of Aurora. Like we talk about how we want to be a platform agnostic company, right? Like we are not, we want to identify who is the auto manufacturer that is best in class at what they do, who's the trucking manufacturer. And the idea from our perspective on how we deploy this technology is that we're going to go with trucking first, which we've already announced, and we're continuing to make progress with that. We announced earlier this summer that we're going to have our trucking presence in Texas, and then we're going to be doing some of that testing there. And that is already on the road, and we're already making progress on that. Then it's going to be on delivery and then passenger mobility. So for us, we're not constraining ourselves to one business model, but it's because of that partnership model, because of how we identify who our partners are, that is how we're going to be able to deploy that driver. And one of the key things about this deal that we haven't yet covered is it's two components, right? There's the acquisition of the ATG team, but there's also a commercial deal that is a part of this that is going to allow us to have access and have a strategic relationship with Uber to be able to deploy this technology more broadly in the years to come.
So wait, so are there other pieces of the acquisition that you want to talk about? I don't want to skim over them.
No, so I would say those are the three components, right? There's the acquisition of the team, there's the commercial deal that gives us a greater access and a strategic relationship with the world's largest ride-hailing company, and then there's the investment, right? So the part of it, and a lot of the questions that we get is, what does our runway look like, right? And how do we continue to grow? And I can tell you several things. I can tell you, number one, our board is so excited about this opportunity, and they're committed, and they're in it for the long haul. And number two, Uber has decided that Aurora is the company that's going to be able to do this and to be able to deploy self-driving technology. So not only are we taking on their team, but they're so committed to the mission, to the work that we're doing, that they're investing $400 million into the company, and that their CEO, Dara, is going to be joining our board.
I saw that. And the investment, what does that mean in terms of the investment? That they're going to work alongside of Aurora in terms of investing in R&D?
I think the investment is a testament to the fact that they believe that we are going to be able to deploy this technology, right? And you mentioned safety earlier. That is a key part of the work that we are doing, right? The message that we are taking to every community across the country, to the federal, to the state, to the local government, is that we want to do this in as safe as possible as we can. It is our team's goal, and I use that broadly because it's from a communications perspective, from a government affairs perspective. Whenever somebody thinks about a company that is doing this safely, we want them to think about Aurora. Like, we want to earn the public's trust to be able to deploy this technology, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is through these partnerships where we're able to go out there and tell that story.
Well, the cool thing about Aurora to me is that we're building on our regional assets here.
Yep.
And their regional assets are like more crystallized in terms of this acquisition and what you're talking about. So safety, logistics, trucking, mobility, those are things that we have deep roots here. And you see the proliferation of startups that are actually addressing those market sectors. So I'm really excited by that, because that is when that an economy starts to gain traction.
But I would go one step further, though, right? Like it's not just about the startup ecosystem, and it's not just about the technology ecosystem, but think about the entire transportation ecosystem, right? It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And here in Pennsylvania, right, we've talked to dairy farmers. And one of the things that dairy farmers will talk about is how this technology will give them access to markets that maybe they don't have access to today because of what it takes for them to move their product from one place to another. So imagine what autonomous trucking can do to some of these farmers that are trying to get these perishable products across the country when all of a sudden they have access to markets that today they can't access. And that's the incredible power of what this technology can do.
That's really exciting. And that plays well to Pennsylvania as well, because when you
Absolutely. It's a huge history, right? Like it's not just about today's world, but it is also about that old world, right? And how is it that we incorporate this technology to make sure that everybody feels the impact of it. Again, if I come back to that broadly component, right? We want a person with a disability to be able to make their life easier to go from point A to point B. We want to help the senior citizen who can't get, who loses their mobility, and we can give that back to them. We want to help the single parent who has to take 3 different bus routes to get to work, if we can give them some of that time back with their family. But on the side of the movement of goods, imagine what it means during crises and during hurricanes, and for businesses that are trying to move their product, if we can do that more efficiently and be able to get their product there faster.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a bold vision. And I did joke with Chris saying, since we have all those amenities and those resources here, just make Pittsburgh the only headquarters. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that.
No, so, I'm glad you put Chris on the spot.
I put him on the spot, and he has deep love for Pittsburgh. So, I'm going to be on him nonstop. So thank you for sharing that in terms of the integration. We'll stay close to you too. So if there are people that are listening here and think that they have some sort of solution or some sort of partnership, and that they are hearing you right now, how could they get in touch? Should they get in touch with you? What might be some great way not to inundate you? But
there is no problem with inundating me, right? Like I'm not afraid to share my email address. By all means, I'm happy to give it on here, put it in the chat room. If folks want to reach out and learn more or figure out a way to connect with us, I'm more than happy to do so.
That's great. So talk about how and where you see additional opportunities across our ecosystem. You've had a good seat at the table in terms of understanding things. So some of you might not know, and I'll repeat, earlier in the pandemic, really early on, Aurora stepped up and said, we really need to make sure that we're not leaving our students who are in public schools behind. And they were adamant about saying that we need to make sure that everyone has a Chromebook, everyone has access to Wi-Fi, everyone has access, because we can see right away when the school shut down that there was a drastic disconnect. And it was with Aurora's leadership that they said, let's convene. And I would like you to just talk about that a little bit, because I think your civic muscle has really made a difference and made many of us just wake up and say, we really do need to do more. And I just want to applaud Aurora's efforts in the work with Neighborhood Allies and Google and the Tech Council. So can you talk about like what happened, the origins of that, and then, where are we today?
Thank you. Right. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your willingness to work with us. And thanks to all the different partners and all the different members of the Technology Council who stepped up and who contributed, right? That began as a grand idea, and we ended up raising over $400,000 to get laptops in the hands of these kids, and we made a real difference in their lives, right? I think if I can take a step backwards, I think one of the things that we as a tech community need to think more about is how, and I think this is honestly for everybody in general, but I think from a tech community in particular, it's about empathy. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's one of the things that I tend to talk a lot about is I think it's really important for us in the tech community to be more empathetic. The reality is that most of us are building incredibly transformational and incredibly disruptive technologies. And sometimes we are so focused in what we are doing that is ultimately good, right? And we are committed, and there's no doubt that what so many of us are doing is incredible and it's going to improve people's lives, but it's also going to change people's lives, and at times it's going to make them uncomfortable. Right. So I think we need to be more empathetic to understand, okay, how is it that people are reacting to this, and bring them into the fold, right? Lift that veil and have them understand how it is that we approach this and be engaged in our communities, right? Like we talk about it really openly that part of our commitment is to earn people's trust. And we're going to do that by partnering with the Technology Council, by partnering with the city, with the state. It's not lipstick on a pig, right? Like this is real. Like we want to have a in-depth relationship that is based on trust, and that takes time to develop. And it's an investment that we all need to make from a tech community. But I think the more that the tech community comes together and engages with the public and engages with government, the more successful that we will all be in the long term.
And I think what it really reiterated for me is that the tech community really are, these companies really are the titans. They're not at the point where they've been mature enough to understand what responsibilities come with being titans. And it's a new world. It's a new world of giving and flexing your engagement. And I think that's what the leadership yielded as a result of trying to go after getting kids what they needed. Is people started talking about, how do we give back? How do we contribute? How do we make a difference? Which included real cash being raised, for example, for the food bank, for people flexing their muscles on 412 food rescue. And I can go on and on. So I think, but I applaud that. And I know that with your leadership in community affairs and government relations, that you will continue to push, the gas pedal, so to speak, whether it's autonomously or not, to make sure that we're civically minded. So the importance of, can you talk about how and where you see the technologies in terms of interaction? Are we already using some of this technology that we don't know about? So are there things that you can peel back?
Yeah, so this is actually a question we get a lot from regulators, right? Terminology and how we talk about this technology really matters, right? Like there's a big difference between driver assist and full self-driving. Okay. So I think there are components of what we do that are already being deployed. But today, a fully self-driving car is not available in the market. You cannot go and buy a fully self-driving car, right? Like you can buy, I'm sorry?
What can you buy?
You can buy cars that have really good driver assist systems. But in the end, every single car that's available today on the market, the human driver is the redundancy, right? Like if something goes wrong, it is the expectation that the human driver can take over the vehicle and get it to safety. If you read through the manuals, if you look at all of these incredible driver assist systems that are out there, the redundancy in the backup system is always going to be the human driver. What we are building and what a lot of the other autonomous companies are building are that level 4 and 5 technology that does not require a human driver to be in the car at all, right? That the redundancy is built into the systems. And so that is the difference. And so when we go and talk to the public and when we talk to the regulators, we have to dispel some of this notion that self-driving cars are already on our road today. Because the reality is that they're not, right? Like even for us, as we are testing on the public roads here in Pittsburgh, we have 2 safety drivers in all of our cars at all times when they're in autonomy. And that is because safety is such a key component of what we're doing.
So that makes me jump into the next question, and that's about public policy. Sure. So how are our state and federal policymakers keeping up with the advancements here? And how, it's got to be more than a full-time job and a team of people to make sure that everything that you just articulated is embedded into strategy and policy.
It is. This is our cheesy line is, we're getting to write the rules of the road. And we're getting to work with government to figure out exactly what that has to look like. And it comes at all different levels, right? Like there's the federal government has jurisdiction over some things, state government has jurisdiction over others, and local. So we work with all levels of government to really understand, what are their goals? What is it that they're trying to accomplish? How is it that we fold and provide that value to them, while at the same time making sure that we're pursuing policy that is tech neutral and platform agnostic, right? Like we don't believe that government should be picking winners and losers when it comes to business, right? And so from our perspective, it's about working with government to figure out how is it that we create a level playing field for the industry to allow us to deploy in these communities and go beyond testing. Right, like in a lot of places, Pennsylvania included, you can test, but you cannot yet deploy this technology on the road once you can show that our technology is safer than a human driver. You're seeing some of this in California, right, where a lot of the testing is happening there. But when it comes to deployment, folks are going to states like Texas and Arizona, and in some cases Florida, where the ability to deploy is there. So one of the conversations that we're having with folks today across the country is we need to go beyond testing and start to create that path to commercialization that's going to allow us to deploy that technology in our communities.
So do you think that the public has post-traumatic stress since the Arizona incident that occurred? Do you think that there's just like little moments that we're holding on to that we can't really, that we're not educated enough about?
I think that there's a lot of education that has to happen on both ends, right? Like I think for us, for example, as an industry and for us as a company, we're constantly looking for opportunities where we can learn from the public. I'll give you a perfect example. We're partnering with Bike PGH to be able to better understand how it is that bicyclists interact with our vehicles and how our vehicle interacts with bicyclists. Like we can do the same thing with motorcycles, right? So there's a lot of learning that has to still occur within the industry, and we're looking for partners that can do that with us. But it's also about working with the public and educating them on what is available, what is not available, how is it that these cars are going to interact, and really bringing them into the fold.
And people remain scared. So I mean, that's really just part of what you need to shift. Are there things that we could be doing and should be doing in the city of Pittsburgh to be more helpful?
I think having folks fully understand that this isn't something that's just going to come here tomorrow and all of a sudden you're going to have self-driving cars all over the city, right? Like it's going to be very gradual. I've heard Chris say, the average age of the US car fleet, I believe, is about 12 years old. Right. And so in order to, like, if you were to think about it, if tomorrow only self-driving cars were to be sold, it would still take 12 years to flip all cars across the country minimum. Right. So it's not, when folks, I think about this technology, what they're really asking is, well, when can I have a self-driving car? Right. Like, when will I own a self-driving car? And it may not be that you own a self-driving car. It may be that you have access to a self-driving car, or it may be that you have access to goods that were on a self-driving truck, or it may be that you have access to a fleet of self-driving cars. So part of what everybody's still trying to figure out is those business models. I think we will all benefit from self-driving technology, but the question that most folks are really asking themselves is, when do I get to have my own personal self-driving car? And that may not be the world that we end up in, right? It might be a variation of all of those other different business models, but what I can say is that I think we will all benefit from having safer streets, right? And be able to better use our resources and more efficiently when we have self-driving technology out there.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree with that. And I like that you're focusing on those people who actually get left behind in this world of mobility. And there are a lot of people that get left behind, and we don't really talk about that. And
no, for us, it's really important that folks have access to this technology, right? Like it's not just about having somebody send a car to go run an errand for them, but we believe that the impact of this technology is very real and transformative to some folks who don't have the options that we do. So how do we make sure that this technology is going to be accessible to all?
That's great. So are you hiring? What's going on?
We're continuing to hire. We still have, I'm sorry?
Do you know what you're hiring for?
I think it's across the board, right? I think there's marketing roles. I think there's communications, there's operations, there's engineering roles. Like we are continuing to hire, we're continuing to grow. In fact, during the pandemic, we've hired, I believe, over 200 people from the time that we shut down as a company, not just here in Pittsburgh, but as a company, over 200 people have been hired since the pandemic first began.
So how large is the company in terms of people?
We are now over 600 people.
You're now over 600 people, and you
Right.
expect growth next year.
We will continue to grow, right? That does not include the ATG team. So of course, there's going to be the integration of the ATG team into that number. And then, yeah, we're going to continue to hire and continue to grow. Ultimately, the talent that we're bringing in is what's going to make us, what's going to continue to allow us to remain best in class and to continue to develop this driver and be able to deploy it more quickly.
Well, listen, I am always thrilled to catch up with you. I'm sure our listeners are as well. You are at the next, what I would call autonomy 2.0, the next version of what's going to be happening in this region. And I appreciate the vision that you have, and that the muscle that you actually exhibit in our community. All of us should take that as great role modeling. Great role.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you guys for the great year and a great partnership. And we hope everyone that was listening had happy holidays.
And that it snows, so
Yeah.
that he can make sure that he is not lying to his children about moving here from Austin. And I just read, I think we're going to have a snowstorm.
Well,
So
that's the plan. That's the hope.
he put his email out there. There's Aurora Careers that's in there, and there's going to be lots and lots of opportunities and discussions in the months ahead. So everyone stay safe. What do we have for the rest of the week, Jonathan?
Well, tomorrow we have Aaron Watson stopping by from Piper Creative to talk about his pivot that he made as he was a finalist for our top pivot at Tech 50 this year, and also give us some tips and tricks with LinkedIn and YouTube. So Aaron's always a great guy to talk to. Looking forward to him tomorrow.
Okay, well, thanks everyone. Stay safe. Thanks, Gerardo.
See you guys.